Thank you so much for joining this evening. My name is Anais Mate. I am the project manager for the Sandy Comprehensive Plan update work that the city is undertaking. It's been a long road. I think we're about a year and a half into probably about a 2.5-year process. We're going to cover a lot of things this evening. I'm really excited to have some folks beyond just our CAC members here. I know we are a fairly small group tonight. I know the weather is really nice, so we'll try to just kind of get through everything. But just generally speaking, really do appreciate you showing up, whether it is via Zoom or in person. So I know it's not very easy for anyone to be attending an evening meeting, so I appreciate that. So yeah, before I go into like what we want to do tonight and why you're here and why we invited you and what we're trying to get out of the conversation, I'll just let everyone introduce one another. So I'll start over here. If you want to face the camera, it is over there.
It's actually right. It's actually right behind you.
Okay. It's very confusing.
No, wait a minute.
The back of my head.
No, it's
Anyways.
Yeah.
Okay, Julia Monti, Oregon Trail School District Communications Director.
Excellent. And you are not a CAC member. You are here on
Just to represent.
just to represent. Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Erica. I'm the administrative specialist for the Clackamas County Disaster Management Department.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sean Olson, Fire Marshal for Clackamas Fire.
See if I can get it right. Phil Snyder with Clackamas Fire District 1.
Yeah.
And I'm Dave Snyder. I'm
For
the,
me.
I'm the economic development manager for the city.
Great. And then online, Shelby, I see you. So go ahead.
Hi, I'm Shelby Butcher, CND resident and part of the CAC committee.
Thanks for joining us, Shelby. What else do we have? Ernie?
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name's Ernie Roberts, and I'm the Chief of Police at the Sandy Police Department.
Great. What else do we have? Kelsey?
I'm the executive assistant for the Parks and Recreation Department.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us tonight. And then we have Natalie. I see you.
Yep. Hi, I'm Natalie Knowles. I also work at 3J Consulting with Anais, and I'm helping out on this project.
Great. And Natalie is also available to kind of help with the Zoom logistics if we run into any snafus. And she's also taking notes for us tonight. So thank you, Natalie.
You sound like a good person to know now.
Very good person to know. And then who do we have? I don't see your
Kirsten.
name. Oh,
Kirsten Ingersoll.
Hi, Kirsten Ingersoll, Clackamas County Public Health. I'm the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Coordinator.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, so I appreciate that. Do you want to load the presentation? And I'll speak to a couple of slides, but I don't need to be speaking to slides the entire evening necessarily. I'm also going to pull it up here so that I even know what I'm trying to say. So because we have a couple of just newer folks in the room, we've had this community advisory committee going for about 1.5 years now, and we've been typically meeting every couple of months. So I probably, Shelby in particular, you'll see some slides that you have seen before, and I'm going to just take a couple more minutes to describe more fully what is this process and this project in general, so you all have a better understanding and context as to where we're coming from in terms of what we're asking of you tonight. Now, just one moment. I can't seem to open up my own presentation. Okay, oh great, thank you. Okay, yeah, welcome and introductions, next slide. So I'm gonna start with just a quick project overview. Yeah, apologies, I guess the slideshow is behind you. A quick project overview about what is Envision Sandy 2050, and then just a couple of quick updates. And then I want to review what is the comprehensive plan and how we are approaching this comprehensive plan process and kind of how this conversation tonight fits into that process. And then our project schedule. And the meat of this evening really is to review what we're calling block 2, or really the draft goals and policies for just kind of a variety of topics from natural hazards, resiliency, emergency management a little bit, to parks and trails and natural resources. And I'll talk a little bit about like how and why we grouped those topics together. But that's the focus of tonight, is to really get your feedback on some of these concepts. And obviously not everything is going to apply to you or your area of expertise. So, just looking for your feedback in the areas where you feel like you either have something to share or contribute that you feel is valuable. So, yeah, and then that's that. And so, we have until 8, and we may just end earlier, or we'll see how it goes. Okay.
Oh, also one other
Yeah.
thing, just for the two of you guys, I don't know if you noticed, but there is food in the break room. There's sandwiches and chips and soda and all that. So please help yourself.
Yeah, thank you. There is food. Okay, so I guess first and foremost, what is a comprehensive plan and why does it matter for any of you in the room or online? A comprehensive plan is essentially the city's kind of leading policy document for land use. So directing where and what kind of land uses occur and happen within the city of Sandy. The state of Oregon mandates that all communities have comprehensive plans. They're long-range planning documents that help a city guide their investments over a 20-year horizon. And it's really rooted in a lot of different things. It's rooted in data and information about population, about demographics, about changing market, economic, and housing trends. So really trying to get a sense of who is our community today, what will our community look like in 20 years, and kind of what are the investments that we need to be building and thinking about in terms of housing, transportation, economic development, hazard mitigation, what have you, in the community of Sandy. So a comprehensive plan is typically updated either when there's massive change in our community or every 15-ish, 20-ish years. It's also a pretty amazing and fun opportunity to do a lot of community outreach and engagement and get folks excited about thinking about what the community has gone through and then what it can be in the next 20 years. Because obviously we all know things change and things change a lot, and change is actually the only constant. So, preparing for and mitigating the effects of change and trying to drive it in a way that is reflective of our values in the built environment is really what the purpose of a comprehensive plan is. Everyone has some sort of, arm in the comprehensive plan, whether you know it or not, whether you're police or fire or school district. It is really the city's leading policy document, and it does direct a lot of investment over time. It also directs a lot of regulatory things like your development code and your zoning and things that actually affect building per se. But it also just directs work plans, it directs budgets, it does a lot of things. So the process that we prepared for this update, the first thing we did, so about 1.5 years ago, we asked ourselves the question of where are we now and where do we want to go? So a couple of things were going on. We prepared a number of background reports, which were essentially pretty data heavy documents describing kind of what our current conditions are around housing, demographics, economy, natural hazards, things like that. And then at the same time, we also launched a pretty huge public outreach campaign, which we essentially coined Envision Sandy 2050. So you may have seen us out at a bunch of different activities in the last year or so. We've been tabling. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Don Robertson is stuck in the panelist view, and if you could allow him to speak and then promote him to panelist, then he can enter them. Little free buttons on the right of his name.
I'm not seeing him on here at all.
So anyways, we launched a pretty large public campaign and got a ton of folks involved. Let's see.
Oh.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, okay,
Sorry about that.
no worries.
And through all of our engagement, I think probably hundreds and hundreds of folks through online surveys. We had a lot of really fun events at the high school. We prepared a draft vision statement. So the draft vision statement is probably, or maybe something you have seen. It was acknowledged by City Council in December of last year. And it basically sets out some aspirations for what sort of community Sandy wants to be in 20 years. And it's organized by 6 principles. And that's essentially how we're going to organize the comprehensive plan update. So we are right now in the goals and policies phase of the comprehensive plan where we have all this information, we know what our vision statement is, and now we're delving into those 6 topic areas and looking at, okay, what existing city policies do we have for some of these topics? What do we want to add? What do we want to remove, et cetera? So it's kind of been an iterative drafting process. And that is going to lead into the new comp plan, which will include our new 2050 vision statement, which is extremely community-led and is essentially the framework for this policy document. It will also include some data and factual information from the background reports, and then it will primarily just be a book of our goals and policies that then direct all of those other items or regulatory tools that I mentioned. And I'll stop for questions in a moment here. Next slide, just a couple of examples of our visioning process and just developing that framework. Quick snapshot of the vision statement and what it looks like on the right side. You'll see there's those 6 sections, and it's about 1 page or so. A lot of outreach, kind of, branded it as just an overall outreach campaign. Got a lot of folks involved in just thinking about what we want to be in 20 years from now. And then another key part of our engagement around the comp plan is, when the city was thinking about updating the comprehensive plan, and this isn't something they've done in a long time, what were some of the things that they really wanted to focus on? Well, one of the things was natural hazard mitigation, primarily just due to the fact that wildfire is a huge threat in the community. So there was a particular emphasis in just the development of the scope for this project around natural hazard mitigation. So we ran a series of 2 workshops in the spring around just identifying what are Sandy's natural hazard vulnerabilities, which are the most important vulnerabilities, so kind of prioritizing those vulnerabilities. And then the second workshop was all about coming together and identifying what sort of strategies could we come up with to help mitigate the impacts of these potential threats. These workshops were amazing in that they were incredibly full of folks with like a lot of cross-discipline solutions. There are people that were there at the natural hazards workshop, so I'll maybe stop talking for a moment. I know that you were there, and I think, who else did we have? Rochelle, or we had Chelsea, maybe. Were you at the natural hazards workshop?
I was not, Michelle might have been there.
Okay. Anyways, I don't know if anybody wants to just like, if anyone had any reflections on what that was like, or yeah, feel free to chime in. I know Shelby was there. Yeah. Eric, I'm looking at you because I know you were there.
I came away with that like very inspired. I very much thought like, I don't know, it was just like a great time. It was great to see so many different solutions and to see that kind of like interdisciplinary work being done. Yeah, it was so nice to see a city looking at climate change, the impacts, and really addressing it head on and from like a very community oriented space, because I feel like you don't see that very frequently. So it was very unique. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Does anybody else have any, David, I guess you were there. Do you have anything you want to say about the workshops? Any takeaways?
Nothing's coming to mind.
Yeah. I would say generally those workshops I felt were effective because of the spectrum of voices that were in the room. We had the school district, and we had Todos Juntos, and we had Clackamas County, and we had DLCD. Like, it was a really interesting group of local and statewide agencies, but then also community partners. So that was kind of where the identification of strategies came into play.
It was pretty nice to get, like you said, to get different perspectives on things, because so often, we get stuck in the agencies that I look at things from a city perspective. I'm sure you look at them from a school district perspective, fire perspective, that. And it was nice to have everybody in the same room looking at the same data with different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think having the school district there was really impressive in terms of just bringing kind of a youth component to climate change, or what you want to term it as, threat of wildfire, like just change in general. But yeah, it was really impressive. And my hope is that some of the content that came from those workshops is reflected in these draft goals and policies.
Was there much conversation like on mitigation practices or anything like that, as far as like placing kind of ownership on the community to help mitigate
Yeah, there was a lot of different conversations about that, and then we can kind of talk about how that is reflected as well in the language here. But yeah, there was a lot of talk about that. Okay, next slide. Oh yeah, that was just photos from our workshop, lots of photos, great. My apologies, this is very small on the screen. This is just a snapshot of where we are in the process. So as I mentioned, this is about a probably 2.5 year process. And we're kind of in the end of it where we're actually compiling all of the draft language and text and narrative for the comprehensive plan as a result of conversations like tonight, as a result of stakeholder workshops, as a result of our CAC, et cetera. And then we are planning to go into the adoption of this document with City Council and Planning Commission starting in, this is actually out of date, I think, probably starting in January of next year. But we're gonna hope, yeah, we'll wrap this up in the next few months. Okay, next slide. So review of the comp plan process and the schedule. I'm gonna just go through this quickly. The current comprehensive plan, what does it look like? What did we do in, what was it, 1990?
97, I want to say, yeah.
Okay, 1997, we were working with clip art, and we had a rather
Yeah, look at that cover page, man.
we
That's
had
awesome.
a rather interesting, extremely text-heavy document. Obviously, these are text documents that, you know, they can be anything from a coffee book table to an actual, you know, text document. I think the point is that the document itself is going to change a lot. Right now, it's a little old. Next slide. And then how is the content organized? You know, so when a city councilor picks this up and is talking about budgets and work plans for different departments, how are they going to use this document? What's the hierarchy of information? And how do we best make sure that the content that the community wants to see is laid out in the way that that we want to be able to message it. So the hierarchy of the information is going to be, we're going to start with the vision. Of course, that is our framework for the comprehensive plan. Then the goal is nestled under that. It's a broad statement of purpose that defines what the community wants to achieve. The policy is a clear statement that guides a specific course of action for decision makers. And then there are some action items. Now, the action items will not be a part of the comprehensive plan because action items are much more measurable and they typically are what build a work plan. So a department will read a policy and then they will build a work plan to achieve the policy. Now, there are elements where we have identified just through our work and conversation, certain action items, which are just very specific things that we want to be keeping track of. So we have been keeping track of those in a separate document, but generally speaking, we don't include them in the comp plan because once you do the thing or you've done the action, you then have to amend the comp plan, which is a bureaucratic nightmare. So we don't do that. So in this updated comp plan, I think currently the city's comp plan has like hundreds and hundreds of policies, like pages and pages of policies. They're probably all were very good and some of them still are probably a little bit repetitive. We're going to organize this around the new comp plan around the 6 vision themes, one of which, a group of which we're talking about tonight. We envision about 3 to 5 goals for each of these vision themes, and then anywhere from 4 to 10 policies per goal. So it is going to be a little bit more streamlined than the original comp plan. Organization and content. So as I said, 6 themes. We're working in blocks of 2. We are in the second of 3 blocks where we're covering parks, trails, and natural resources, as well as natural hazards and resiliency. And this little matrix is just helpful for us to keep track of what are the topic areas we're capturing in these blocks, and then also making sure that we are meeting the applicable statewide planning goals. Of which there are 19 and 14 of them are applicable to the city of Sandy. Sorry that this is very small text. It's not that important. Okay, existing goals and policies. So obviously this information that we're going to look at tonight doesn't come from thin air. There's a number of things that go into the thinking and the development of concepts. Not only do we have does the city have documents such as a transit master plan or an economic opportunities analysis or housing needs analysis? These are all technical kind of research papers that pull together all the data and information we have about these various topics. in order to be able to inform the comprehensive plan. The two documents that we leaned on very heavily for the development of the goals and policies tonight are the city's brand new Parks and Trails Master Plan that was just adopted by City Council a year and a half ago. And then in addition, Clackamas County is updating their natural hazards mitigation plan. It was last updated in 2019, and I know the county's updating it for 2024. Is that correct?
Yes. I
Yeah.
believe so.
Okay. So there was kind of dipping in a bunch of different buckets to be able to understand what makes sense for development concepts for Sandy. Other inputs include obviously community outreach and engagement, the natural hazards stakeholder workshop series, city staff input, planning commission and city council input, and I don't know, oh, that looks weird on my computer, as well as interviews and outreach to community partners, stakeholders, local and regional agencies, and service providers. So I would kind of envision this meeting tonight being sort of our focus group with certain community partners. So this is kind of our hope is to bring you into the conversation at this point in time so that you can review draft materials and give us your feedback on these concepts. And that's kind of our stakeholder engagement. And it looks kind of different for each block depending on what we're talking about. The block process of updating the comp plan. So this is just kind of an iterative look at how we're doing this. We drafted policies, planning commission and city council reviewed what's in front of you already. We revised based on kind of their initial review. And then we're coming to you with that draft, as well as going out and doing additional engagement. And then we're going to revise this document that we're looking at tonight based on the feedback that we get from all of you. And we're going to present it back to city council and planning commission and just share what changes we made based on the feedback we got. And then that'll help us finalize our policies. Any questions from the room online or here about what I talked about? I know that was a lot of information. No? Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. So I'll just preface that there's no easy way to go about looking and talking about a very text-heavy document. And so my apologies, like the text is going to be up on the screen. Thankfully, for those that are in the room, it's printed. My thought is I'm going to try and give you a little bit of an orientation to the content. And then I do want to just, to the extent that you have comments or want to provide edits or what have you, we'll kind of be keeping track of that. And I do just encourage discussion where you think it is warranted. So I would love to do less talking as much as possible, but it is also a lot of content. So I'm going to do my best to just, as I said, give a bit of a run through about what we're looking at, and then just leave it open to the room to talk about it, and then we can kind of move on. Okay, so we are in block 2, which was natural hazards and resiliency, and then parks, trails, and natural resources. And so the way that this content in front of you that was organized is theme 1, we start with natural hazards and resiliency. And we of course have a vision statement for this theme. I put the vision statement up on the screen, but that basically is the framework for the goals and the policies. So the language in the vision statement should reflect some of the language that we see in the goals and policies. Now, under this theme, we have this vision, the next slide, there are kind of 2 sub-themes. So in this, under natural hazards and resiliency, we talk about community preparation and community resilience. And then under community preparation and community resilience, we have 2 to 3 goals. So under community preparation, the first goal is prepare Sandy residents and business owners for wildfire and volcano risk. And goal 2, prepare Sandy residents and business owners for earthquakes, floods, landslides, and other extreme weather events. And I'll talk a little bit about why they're split out. But under community resilience, protect public and physical assets in the community from natural hazards, partner and coordinate regionally to reduce risk from natural hazards, and build community resilience to more frequent natural disasters and other chronic stressors.
Folders for rework next. I think you're in the front now.
Yeah,
July 13th, that's it.
yeah. If you're,
There you
yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I knew that.
Okay.
No, no, it's,
No.
it took me a minute too. They are organized. by
My
tabs.
apologies. I think they're all in that
Yeah.
order, but we kind of had a little bit of a scramble right at the end of the
Okay.
day before we came down here. So
So
I
that's
know
the
the data's there, it just may not be in different space.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the organization of this first theme and those sub themes and those goals. So I'm gonna turn now to the folks that have the meeting packet in front of them, and you can also just go to the next slide, I guess. So community preparation. So the first goal was talking about preparing Sandy residents and business owners for wildfire and volcano risk. We have 7 policies that it came up here. I might just give everyone a moment to kind of take this in, scan, and then let us know if there's anything that's jumping out at you. We can answer questions. The first read of this is always a little sloppy. And it's great for all of our eyes, to be honest, because sometimes we're in this document and we just don't catch things and things don't read very well. So we're really looking to you to kind of help us, guide us as to how things are sticking to you when you first read this. And as I mentioned, the goals for wildfire, the 2 goals for community preparation are split. The first one talks about wildfire and volcano risk, and the second talks about earthquakes, floods, landslides, and other extreme weather events. There was a reasoning for why volcano risk was added to wildfire. And that might be the one crux where I don't actually know how to answer that question. But I recall that there was a reason for why we split it out and grouped wildfire and volcano risk and then like earthquakes. But I think maybe I'll let you know that that's my question and that I'd like to get to the bottom of. Yes, I see someone has their hand up.
Yeah, I would just wanted to ask regarding the statement of the work of the fire district and just whether or not there's other city units like the library or anything like that that maybe should be included in that policy. And then also potentially adding assisting people to sign up for public alerts. That might be helpful in that area. Another thing just for updates is that Clackamas County Emergency Management down under policy 1.6, they changed their name to Clackamas County Disaster Management. And then I guess the only other thing that I would wonder just in the community preparedness aspect is whether or not there is an existing committee within the city that does emergency preparedness so that, there's just that council of peers that can help do some of the community preparation or engage community partners or CBOs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So just to make sure I capture that, Clackamas County Disaster Management. And then there was a question about whether there are other community partners that could help implement or support the Ready, Set, Go readiness campaign. And then there was also a potential idea for adding a concept around just general education or assistance to people for signing up for alerts or accessing information. Did I capture all of that?
Yeah, Clackamas Public Alerts is the name of it. And so that's something that, we could provide to you. It's on the county's website. And it does help if there are people that can help navigate with that. And then I guess just another thing to add on was just if there's any language in any of the documents that go over disability access and functional needs. I think that that probably is something that would come up to you as a city. And maybe there should be language in there that just has some of that disability access and functional needs so that you're integrating that and making sure that there's equity in the policies as you're addressing and doing the education or, you know, building out structures and that kind of stuff.
That is so excellent. Thank you so much for that feedback. Thank you, thank you.
I'm curious as to, there's a part that says extended power outages caused by planned shutdowns to address wildfire risk. I'm curious as to if that language was specifically chosen.
Yeah, what policy was that?
1.7.
Yeah,
They're often referred to as public safety power shutoffs, and I feel like using that language consistently.
Public safety,
Power shutoffs. That's good. That sounds much better.
public safety, yeah.
I think this language actually came directly from the stakeholder workshops.
Hmm.
I mean, the concept itself did.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, public safety power outage,
Shutoffs.
shutoffs.
Yeah.
PSPS.
Oh, there's even a fancy acronym.
Yeah.
Okay,
And they have.
Wouldn't that be PS squared?
They have very good maps as well that could be tied onto that. There's
Okay.
shut off maps that show the actual, when they pull the plug, you know, it shows the Highway 26 corridor, the
Yeah.
whole run area.
Really? So this publicly accessible?
Yeah.
Oh,
who
wow.
provides those?
We need
What's
to,
that?
Who provides those?
PG.
PG.
Yeah.
boy,
So
we need to
they
integrate that in our
provide you probably
website.
with the digital type, because they have it on their website, but yeah, I'm sure you could, I got a gentleman's number you could, I can
Okay.
give you.
Excellent.
Well, I think you may already know it, but PG also has the public announcements you can sign up for, get the alerts the same way that the
Mhm.
county has,
I get it.
which is awesome. So
And PGE sends, we partner with PGE when they have the power shutoffs because they do resource centers in our schools. And so, in fact, they just yesterday or today, sent information for the community. about
Great.
Power shutoffs and when, you know, whether it's PGE or fire department, police, city, whoever, when there's information like this, when citizens need to be informed, when they need to be educated, we always get on board with that because we have captive audience. So we always send,
Right.
when I got the information from PGE, I send it out to all of our families. So, you know, we're very willing to continue.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'm almost wondering if maybe there's room here, or we can actually look at some of the other policies about just collaboration among various partners with the city in terms of communication out about emergencies.
Yeah, the
Because I
one,
think we call out the fire district, for example, obviously. We call out Clackamas County disaster management, but there maybe is a role for the school district in this, or just acknowledging that the school district has a major role in communications as well.
and again, we still have that radio station that we never use. That's at the police station. I believe it's still, Ernie could speak on that if it's still in service, but it goes a 5-mile radius on 1660 AM.
Okay.
That is another communication
Right.
outreach that you
It's
put
in
a
my
thumb drive in.
communication plan, but yeah, I've never, I
Yeah.
know we've never had to use it.
We
I
used to
think
have
we
it,
have a recorded message on it.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other thoughts?
I want to change the verbiage on 1.1, 1.2 and says Sandy or the Fire District 72 to say Clackamas Fire District 1. on both
Yeah.
those, because they're doing full contract service.
Okay, Clackamas Fire District 1.
Yes.
Congratulations on the new contract.
Well, I don't know, I lost it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the politics.
don't make it
Yeah,
awkward.
It's all good. Change patch, I'm so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we definitely want to update that verbiage.
And yeah, you already got the disaster. I have that marked as well, because it's switched from emergency management
Yeah.
to disaster services.
One item that I've been pretty well involved in is the Oregon Defensible Space Code.
Great.
development and all that for the last 2 years with the Oregon Farmers Association. So
Yeah,
that is currently on hold, but it has been adopted, hasn't been fully adopted, but will be in effect once the Oregon Department of Forestry's map comes out
right.
and gets implemented, and then the Oregon Defensible Space Code will come into play. So I'm just looking at, because some of you, like the comment here with like building codes and reduced risk for new construction, that's gonna be next to the one, because that's already gonna be, is gonna happen
Right.
statewide.
Right.
So, and it'll be interesting to see, were you guys ever take a look at that map before they rescinded it, what this area looked like? As a quick glimpse?
The southeast would be an area that we were getting up to fairly high.
Was it?
Straight now,
Okay.
but most of Sandy is in pretty good shape.
Yeah, so policy
Yeah, yeah,
1.3, I guess you're saying is, yes. That is definitely,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and you may not even have to adopt it, because it's
Right.
adopted at state building codes division, then it's implemented statewide, so.
well, the city still has to like do the thing of like adopting it into their code. They're gonna be mandated to do so, but I guess it's still like a regulatory process they have to make sure to do.
Okay, because that
Yeah.
fire code, we don't have to, but if building code does locally.
Yeah,
If they plan on making amendments to it.
Yeah, we'd have to adopt it locally just because I think sometimes is it that our building codes can be stricter than the states? But not, I
Yes.
can't remember, yeah,
Yeah.
Mini maxi state,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you can't be less than the minimum.
right, got it, okay, so,
Yeah.
excellent.
And then that home hardening rule will come into effect once the state Oregon Defensible Space Code does come out. So that's perfect.
That's great.
So, yeah,
I feel like that, just building codes, defensible space, that is actually echoed in a couple of other policies as well. So let's make sure, okay, we have policy 1.3. Let's see how it reads in some other policies. It might be repetitive in other places, or we might want to clarify even further in other places. So let's keep that in mind. Anything else on this goal under goal 1?
the only thing that kind of jumped out at me was under policy 1.7. I almost feel like that needs to be like bolded or something, it needs to have an asterisk next to it, because it sounds to me like power outage, like planned shutdowns are going to happen more and more and more often as time goes on.
yeah.
And so that becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger policy.
Yeah, I think the tricky thing about these comprehensive plans is it's not a document of prioritization per se, but it is comprehensive in nature in that it is trying to collect everything together. So I don't want to read the policies in like an order of priority, but because it is here, it is important.
Okay, got
So
it.
but I like the idea of like, I hear you, this is
Yeah.
very important, yeah. I mean, maybe we can beef up the language even further, so. Okay, let's move on. Goal 2, prepare Sandy residents and business owners for earthquakes, floods, landslides, and other extreme weather events. So this is kind of similar to the first goal, but now speaking to a couple of different natural hazards. Okay, I think immediately I see there's repetition between policy 2.2 regarding public safety shutoffs, or what would be called a public safety shutoff. I think we're trying to, my understanding in these 2 goals is that we're trying to extricate the actions needed for earthquakes, floods, landslides, and other extreme weather events from things like fire specifically. So which is probably why it's like identified at the second time.
Yeah, and the extended power outages caused by extreme weather, I think lends more to like, they're not planned. It's just,
Right,
there's the
right.
event happening, people lose power for an extended period of time, like. winter
Cause,
storms and
right,
stuff.
right.
And at least for right now, Sandy's, I mean, it's much more likely we have a power outage due to ice than fire, really, although that will probably change in the future, but.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm also noticing there's mentions of like extreme heat events, but I'm assuming you all get extreme cold events as well. so
Yeah.
Ice storms and snow. and
Yeah.
things like
Right, right,
that.
right.
So we've got shelters for extreme heat events, like cooling shelters and stuff, but do we have warming shelters available in Sandy as well?
Okay. What about one? Yeah.
Well, and I think when, when you're talking about the power shut off, that's for a few days to get through a certain period of time. Extended power
Yeah.
outage due to an earthquake could be weeks.
Yeah.
So I think it's two different levels of preparation. I think.
Short term and long term planning.
Policy 2.5 actually speaks to the cooling during heat event. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind, I misread that. Warming shelters versus cool.
Almost seems like you can take 2.3 to 2.5, pull it into one statement,
Yeah,
condense those three, and then add a second one that speaks directly to cold events.
yeah. Okay, so combine 2.3 and 2.5.
And 2.4,
Yeah,
I would honestly, I could see probably rolling all those into one
Yeah.
policy, shorten it up, squeeze it up,
yeah,
and then create a new one for 2.5 for cold events. Because
okay,
often two extremes, but
great. Any other comments on this one? Oh, I'm sorry. I look up and I see a hand raised. My
Okay.
apologies.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I was just going to comment on the same thing about the majority or the three of those that had the extreme heat and that it didn't fully address the other hazards that you had put in there. And then, I'm also wondering in the community preparation about those residents that would need medical transportation. And I noticed earlier on, you had a whole different transportation plan. But, just some people without power are not going to be able to medically stay in the community. And I'm not sure if that would go in this section or if it's covered in your transportation section.
Thank you for flagging that. I can go back to the transportation goals and policies. There was a number of them. And there was a section on kind of emergency management, but it was light. So I'll go back and check. And then I do have a note here about just medical transportation, and that might be something we want to add here. Thank you. Anything else under here for goal 2?
maybe we're not. But I'm just more speaking just out loud. Maybe
Yeah.
it's in there somewhere. I apologize, I haven't seen it, but is there anything that speaks to like critical infrastructure?
Which would stand up already.
Let's
I
look,
mean,
yeah,
Okay.
and let's, because there's actually, I'm looking through, there's actually a lot more goals here, so
Yeah.
maybe, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, maybe.
No, I don't want to
Um,
add more to the,
no,
this
that's
is more
great.
just a thought.
Okay, let's move into community resilience. So under community resilience, we have 3 goals now rather than 2, and we have a couple of policies. So the first goal, goal 3 under community resilience, is protecting public and physical assets from the community from natural hazards. So this actually might be where we
Yeah.
talk about infrastructure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3.1, public buildings, city
Right.
managed facilities.
Okay, so the first policy is about public buildings and city managed facilities, utilities, et cetera, open space, parklands. We have a policy about promoting and protecting the use of naturally flood prone open space for flood storage areas. Policy 3.3, I personally think that the language is a little chunky. Adopt land use policies. A policy shouldn't talk about adopting a policy. But rather we just strike the beginning of it and say, something about significantly reduce or promote a reduction in development, or something like that in high risk areas. Policy 3.4 speaks a little bit, but not directly, to the defensible space idea. but it doesn't call it out. I wonder if we want to just mention defensible space somewhere, like just call it out as
I
a
was just
term.
thinking, honestly, I would.
You would.
Just because of I don't think, and I've been told, it doesn't limit any jurisdiction for grant funding or anything like that, but if it shows like, hey, the city's taking the initiative to address defensible space code, public education enforcement, all that stuff, it might open the door for more grant funding.
Love it.
So state and federal.
Mhm.
You know, if you have it, of course, having it in your comprehensive plan would be awesome.
That's great. Yeah, so maybe what we can do is we can add defensible space or speak to it very specifically in policy 3.4 and kind of massage that a little bit.
Yeah, because that's gonna encompass so much, because when that code goes into effect, and if Sandy and incorporated and unincorporated Sandy residents fall within that defensible space code requirement, then it's gonna be, there's the
Yeah.
enforcement side, the education side, but again, there'll be opportunities for grants and which will help. a lot.
Great. Kirsten,
Yeah, so again, I apologize that, you know, I'm probably mixing things in where they don't belong, but I'm just thinking about the roads, and again, it might be in transportation, but just the evacuation routes for wildfire and trying to ensure that the public does not go on those familiar back roads to try to leave the area. So whether it's mapping, signage, and it still kind of gets it at the physical asset being a road or a driveway, something like that. I'm not sure that it goes here, but whether or not it's included in the transportation plan.
yeah, there is a policy about evacuation routes in the transportation section. And then I'm also going back to policy 1.6, work with Clackamas County Disaster Management to further develop and educate the public regarding evacuation routes and procedures. So that's kind of a programmatic component. And then with the evacuation plan, there's mention of that in the transportation section. Do you feel like that kind of covers your thoughts, or do you think that we need to add more?
Yeah, I think that covers it. I just wanted to make sure that it was in there because I know that's one of your huge risks is with the wildfires, right?
Absolutely, yeah, thank you. Shelby?
Yeah, my question was on policy 3.1. At the end, it says prioritizing projects beginning with structures that are needed for emergency sheltering. Would this be possible to also include first response and critical services? Because it seems like if you prioritize shelters that are just needed shelter people, but your critical services might need improvement in their buildings, that could be tricky. In terms of
I mean, we're fortunate in Sandy that a lot of our critical services are housed in very new buildings. I mean, you have the newest building of anybody. Yours was completed in 2018. Yeah, and then the PD was completed, I want to say in 2016, is that right? 15, 16, somewhere around. So either way, I mean, some communities have, you know, police stations and fire departments that are 50 years old. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite-
I almost wonder if policy 3.1 could be split into two, because it's a little lengthy and a little wordy. And we talk about maybe first, just making sure we understand and have assessed all of our public-owned facilities and infrastructure. And then the second policy is, what are we prioritizing?
Mhm.
Emergency sheltering, first response, and critical services first.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else you have a goal 3? Shelby, you still have your hand up. I don't know if I answered your question or, but that's great. Okay, moving on to goal 4. So actually, we had talked right at the beginning about the importance of just partnering and coordinating regionally to reduce risk from natural hazards. So maybe this is where we speak to the school district actually. But yeah, I'll give you all a moment to just read through this. I have a question about changing resilience needs. It feels a little wonky, the wording. Don, you have your hand up. Is that Don?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, I do. Thank you. First of all, I apologize for being a little bit late and then being stuck in the audience portion as opposed to the,
Oh, thank you. Thanks for emailing me. I'm sorry that you were stuck there.
that's okay. It was kind of nice to be on the outside looking in a little bit.
So appreciate it.
Rochelle, I don't know if you mentioned, but Rochelle was unable to attend tonight. She did forward her comments to me to share with you on her behalf this evening. She did have one quick comment on policy 3.7, but I don't see it on the list. I didn't know if you'd eliminated 3.7 or if that's going to be on the next page that we're about to look at. But I didn't want to lose it in case we went to goal 4.
Don, are we look? I wonder why it's not there. Maybe we just dropped it off of the packet by accident. Can you read us that policy?
Certainly. 3.7 reads, develop forest vegetation management plans for city-owned open spaces along Sandy River and Tickle Creek to address noxious weeds, mitigation, blow down, and plant drought tolerant trees and vegetation. On that, I would add one more little tiny thing under develop forest vegetation and management plans that also include integrated pest management plans on a citywide level. The Parks Department has one, but I don't believe that Public Works utilizes an IPM
Got it.
process. And I think it would behoove them, the city, to include that as a goal moving forward.
Thank you. I see now where you are. You're actually way ahead of us.
Oh, well, they're listed at 3.7 on mine.
7 under natural resources, but thank you for flagging that. And I made a note. And I also will let you know that Rochelle did send me her comments via email. So I do have a copy of that as well.
All righty then.
Perfect. Okay, we'll get there soon. Okay.
Oh,
Good.
no problem.
All right, we are back to goal 4 under community resilience. Anything here?
Again, verbiage 4.4, it says specific power, and I think it should PGE. And then instead of emergency disaster management, again, just verbiage that we already
Yeah, no,
talked
this is
about.
great. We want to make sure we capture all of that. We are using you as our additional editing eyes. So
The Clackamas Community Wildfire Protection Plan, does that include that fuels reduction program? Does anybody know? Do you know?
I am not entirely sure.
No.
Jay Wilson in our office is managing that though.
Okay.
So I can always
I
ask him.
believe it
Yeah.
got finalized today.
Yeah,
I think I saw it come out saying it was final.
Oh.
So we can get that plan to look at as well.
it generally will have a pretty good comprehensive outlook and overview of areas that are concerned, where you can go in and specifically target that fuel reduction efforts.
Oh, right on.
mitigations, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention that Ant Farm has already gotten part of that contract, so they're doing the fuels mitigation up there, I think, already, which is great.
They've done
Yeah.
like 220 estimates, and they've done quite a few this year with the grant money.
oh wow,
Cool.
They're out of money, but they're reapplying now for another grant for next year.
excellent. Kirsten,
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the policy 4.3 and ensuring that the plans are well understood. And so is that just well understood by the city, or does that mean well understood by community members? And then I'm also wondering, when I think of that question about any communications plans and ensuring that throughout that it's available in multiple languages and or just accessible.
yeah. That's great. Great question. I almost feel like policy 4.3 is yet another example of something that's a little clunky in terms of wording. But I see that as like define roles and responsibilities between the county and the city when it comes to emergency management plans. And maybe part of that is emergency management plans and communication plans.
Also, is it addressing the city understanding disaster management plans or disaster management understanding the city plan, or is it collaborative there?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd hope
Yeah.
maybe collaborative, but maybe we just need to massage the language where it's like, we're trying to define and identify like what are the different stakeholders, roles and responsibilities.
And then are there any state managed lands within your jurisdiction?
Say
Because
that again.
then this might be too narrow between the county and the city.
Could you repeat that? We didn't catch part of it.
Is there state property within the jurisdiction?
Oh, like state-owned land within the city?
Yeah, I'm
No.
just wondering if the, between the county and the city is too narrow, if it needs to be other partners, because there are other partners like PGE owned property that could reduce those natural hazard risks, you know, by removing trees or removing hazards. And so I think it's good to coordinate between the county and the city, but do you need to add other businesses? Do you need to broaden that language, or do you need to add a different policy that talks about other entities, the state of Oregon, other businesses?
Yeah,
other property owners?
yeah, I'm thinking like DSL, Department of State Lands. That's actually a great point. And maybe the reason we don't call those out is because there are no state-owned properties within the city limits specifically.
Yeah,
But
not-
let
not that I know.
me raise that with staff and see if there are other agencies. I feel like I don't know where to look. There are other agencies that we want to call out beyond just the county. Like maybe we do want to be calling out the Department of State Lands and PGE, even though they're like a private entity. But okay, I like that a lot. We'll talk about it with staff because I feel like I need more information as well. Okay. Anything else here under goal 4? All right, goal 5, and then we're done with the section. So this is about building community resilience to more frequent natural disasters and other chronic stressors. My take on this section is a little bit more programmatic and a little bit less land use focused. But there are certainly elements of this in the comprehensive plan. And I think this is actually where we talk about, I kind of feel like this goal was a bit of a bucket for a lot of ideas that came from the stakeholder workshop around like mental health and youth and local food and a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what encourage and support local food production will look like. Like, does that look like community gardens? Does that
Yeah.
look like how does that show up?
Does Ant Farm have a role in that, or?
I mean,
They sound-
they have a community garden that they use to provide some of the fruits and vegetables for the cafe.
Yeah.
And I think some of that stuff goes to food bank too, but I mean, it's like the size of this room.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not huge.
I don't know how the city.
Does the city still have the community garden in the park?
We do still have the community gardens at Bornstead Park.
Yeah. You know what I feel like this is actually speaking to is in the stakeholder workshops, we had a lot of conversation around the risk, just being surrounded by agriculture, just as an economic driver around Sandy to some extent. And the role of agriculture and how that interplays with the economy in Sandy, but then also how that interplays with workers that work in the field and are subject to extreme heat events much more frequently than, say, folks that are in an office. I wonder if the local food production is really talking about just agriculture.
That makes more
Yeah,
sense.
Shelby, yeah, your question?
Not related to what you were saying there, but a question on policy 5.4.
Yeah,
It talks about working with the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that businesses are insured properly. Would there be the possibility to include any education about homeowners being properly insured?
yeah, I think that we mentioned that somewhere. I think there was a policy about property owners and business owners. Policy 3.3 under community goal 3, prevent or significantly reduce development in high-risk areas and educate residents and businesses about the risk of property investment in these areas. Maybe there's some language massaging about like education around high-risk areas and like insurance and things like
Yeah,
that.
I don't think it would be the role of the Chamber of Commerce to ensure that people are insured.
Right.
But to educate them.
So the
on
Chamber of
their
Commerce can
options.
speak to our businesses. Maybe the city has more of a role then to speak to our property owners. And maybe it's like more of a collaboration with Chamber around coordinating and ensuring education around these items with business owners. And then clarifying the city's maybe like more of a role in supporting property owners.
Another thing to remember about the Chamber of Commerce is only a percentage of businesses in town are chamber members.
Right.
So maybe that would be better coming directly from the city's economic development office.
And I also just want to mention too, that financial preparedness is part of emergency preparedness. So, that there are documents that go through that, whether it's for businesses or for individuals. I just think it's important to note, especially because of all of the hazards and also the people that are in apartments, whether or not they know to insure themselves. And it's not just property owners, but the people that are at risk, most of at risk of losing everything and not being insured as well could be people that are in apartments.
Okay. Thank you, Kirsten.
And I think it probably is more appropriate, David, to have that come from the development office, but you might want to say development office in partnership.
Yeah. I wonder
Well,
if we-
certainly on policy 5.3, because the chamber has most of the local festivals and celebrations, with the exception of the Mountain Festival. So,
I
yeah.
think when we say work with, we assume it's the city, and we assume the city is at various departments, and in this case, it would be the department that is most suited to that collaboration, which would be I don't know if we want to necessarily start calling out departments in the comp plan. I almost feel like we want to just name the city, and then the city directs the work plan or the department specifically. But I agree though that like that certainly makes way more sense for the economic development department to be leading the charge on that than say the building department.
And I think if you also add financial preparedness, that it could just, the language of financial preparedness could be applied, equally across many organizations or individuals or groups.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. So financial preparedness.
I'm looking at policy 5.7, and I really do like this focus on youth engagement and help in the community. But something that comes to mind is we don't just want youth to engage and help, and we want them to be leaders and inform policy as well. And I think that will also help reduce their anxiety and that feeling of community.
Yeah, make them leaders. I love that. And to let you know that in the first block, we talk about community engagement, and there's a section on youth engagement and just civic leadership specifically. So we do capture that. Okay. But I agree, that is important. Yeah, and we've covered it.
And would there be any addition in the language to add people age 65 and up? So whether or not it's a separate policy or if it can be combined with engaging youth, but maybe that could be broadened to include people age 65 and older.
Yeah, this a really interesting conversation, because I feel like at the stakeholder workshops, there was a whole flip chart dedicated to mental health and youth, and how like emergencies and disasters really impact mental health, and like specifically impact youth mental health. So I think that's probably why we called out youth so specifically in this policy. But Kirsten, I hear you, like we wanna speak to the full spectrum of community members, and there may be room to just add something about engaging seniors or
Yeah, and I also wonder if you could weave in, you know, as you're naming some of the organizations specifically, whether or not you might want to broadly add community-based organizations. And so you had mentioned Ant Farm, but Ant Farm does work in that youth and senior age range, having the youth help the seniors. And so it's mutually beneficial. So I'm just wondering if broadening the language to include community-based organizations instead of specifically naming, well, like partner with community organizations, I guess, community-based organizations, CBOs.
yeah, excellent.
Something else that's kind of coming to mind, it might be a little bit nitpicky, but the use of the term natural disaster, there's kind of this shift in that language between natural disaster and natural hazards.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we do want to change that kind of language to reflect that change.
Yeah, so we could all, like, maybe just standardizing the language in general, so we talk about emergencies and natural hazards. Reducing risk from natural hazards by increasingly frequent and severe natural
That makes sense. 'Cause
Yeah.
a disaster is like big volume, full scale. Hazard is something like we can see, like snow's a hazard, ice is a hazard.
Yeah.
It kind of encompasses all of that. That makes sense, or it's two separate things.
Right, like disasters are not like the natural thing. Disasters happen when like they impact people.
Yeah.
And so I think it takes that ownership of like disasters belong to like nature, whereas
Yeah.
like disasters happen because of how people interact with their environment and how we're building, things like that,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Natural hazards. Great. Did we finish the first theme? Thanks, guys, for sticking it out. We have about 20 minutes left, so we can run through this. So Don, this is the section where I think you were speaking to us a little bit about that policy. We're not quite there yet, but we are coming into parks, trails, and natural resources. So yeah, here's my PowerPoint, but I obviously have gone off script. Parks, trails, and natural resources. We have a vision statement for this. And then we organized this into two sections. In the current comprehensive plan, we have a full section on parks and then a full section on natural resources. But when we were talking to people, we talked about all of those things together, which is why we kind of grouped natural resources with parks and trails. So we divided it up into one section about parks and trails development, and then one section that speaks to natural resources. So under parks and trails development, we have 3 goals. The first is about developing parks, amenities, and recreation opportunities that are equitably distributed across the city. Goal 2 is about creating a looped network of trails that connect parks and neighborhoods, provides opportunities for alternative transportation, et cetera. And then goal 3 is about facilitating funding for land acquisition, recreation development, operations, and maintenance. A quick note about the language here from the Parks and Trails section. This all came from the Parks and Trails master plan. So we went into the plan and looked at the recommendations section of the plan, and there was a whole slew of bulleted recommendations. that we then folded into this document. There were also some recommendations around just funding mechanisms and things like that, which is why we added that goal about funding for land acquisition. It was not split out very well in the Parks and Trails Master Plan, so we tried to organize the content a little bit more cleanly in the comprehensive plan, but most of what you see here comes directly from that document. So Parks and Trails development, so developing parks, amenities, and recreation opportunities that are equitably distributed across the city. I'll give you some time to kind of read through this. I will say one of the major recommendations of the Parks and Trails Master Plan was an emphasis on equitable distribution of park investment and development. And I think that we'll see that in this language. Keep that in mind in terms of the policy language under this goal here. Don, did you have a big role in the development of the Parks and Trails Master Plan?
Yes, I was fairly heavily involved in that process.
Excellent. So I hope everything looks very familiar to you.
Yeah, it all looks familiar to me. Rochelle did pass along several points that, and I know she shared them with you, but just for the benefit of everybody else, I know that on policy 1.1, one of the things that we wanted to, one thing that we have plenty of are mini parks, and those are not exactly the most useful or economically sound development. So her suggestion was to, kind of take that out and just say served areas are served based on the master plan's level of service, and drop those two classifications of neighborhood or mini parks from that. Shorten your sentence a little bit there.
For policy 3.1.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
On number 2, with the community park sports fields, the suggestion is multi-purpose sports field. We don't think we can really afford to build a baseball complex or a softball complex or a soccer complex, but any sports fields that we do develop are going to have to be multi-purpose and be able to kind of fit a number of different things there.
Great.
Just kind of moving through that, 1.3 looks good to me. 1.4 looks good. 5 looks good also. I don't see any of her additional notes on any of those till she gets down to 1 point. Well, I think she was pretty comfortable with pretty much everything in there, maybe a word here or there, but you'll be able to pick that up in her notes. Nothing worth really having to note for everybody here.
Does anybody else have any comments?
1.5 and 1.7. 1.5 is about renovating existing parks to update aging equipment. And 1.7 is about developing a new universal access playground. And I'm curious as to whether or not the renovations that are happening to these existing parks could, as a standard, become that new universal access playground, so that every single park has that accessibility.
Don, I don't know if you want to just, since you have so much experience with this, want to respond to that, or?
Yes, I think that is our goal, is to make everything universally acceptable, not just ADA compliant, but we want to be open to everything. So I think where we were trying to get with it was 1.5 was more acknowledging existing facilities, whereas 1.7 was as we're developing new facilities. So for instance, new facilities would include the community campus or the Ponder Lane or Champion Way as noted in 1.4. So basically, the 1.7 is kind of setting that standard for the new ones coming in as that, and 1.5 is dealing with existing playgrounds and sports courts and paths that are substandard at this point in time. Does that make sense to you?
Maybe in 1.5, you just need to mention that when you renovate, that you would make them accessible.
Yeah, I think you could probably, in the, you know, interest of conserving space, you could probably just combine those two.
Yeah.
And, you know, on what place, yeah, if you just ensure that any new playground will be accessible. Yeah.
Great. Anything else on this one? Okay. Okay, the next goal is about trails, more specifically. Create a loop network of trails that connects parks and neighborhoods and provides opportunities for alternative transportation and recreation throughout the city. So these also came from the Parks and Trails Master Plan.
Well, I like the idea of the interconnectivity and including schools because.
In 2.4.
Not 2.4, just in 2.1, where you're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about key destinations, including schools, because
Yeah.
during off-school time, there's playgrounds that are accessible. In 2.4, you're asking to have public access to an outdoor classroom. So, you know, I'm not sure what the rationale would be for that, to allow strangers into an outdoor classroom where students would be on, you know, based on our protocols for student safety and campus security. We wouldn't open up a classroom to.
The trails or?
Sorry,
the class-
Well, the environmental trail.
I think that's more of in reference, I think it was what she was trying to indicate is the, for instance, the forested areas adjacent to the high school area have potential for trails. And I believe in our master plan or Parks and Trails Master Plan, it calls out to utilize some of that space for trail connectivity to allow better trail access to the high school itself for the students.
I mean, that's fine for access off school time, but those trails are used for our environmental science classes. So there would be during the school day, there could be students on those trails. And we don't let strangers walk into our schools and into a classroom. So that's basically what you would be asking is.
I think, I hear what you're saying. Don, you're saying that there is a plan to develop public trails beyond.
I don't have the master plan right in front of me, and I'm trying to remember that one particular section really well, but it seems to me that there was some publicly owned property adjacent to the school district property that we wanted to be able to link into the school district property with. We don't want to necessarily direct people there during the school hours, but have it to create accessibility, I guess, to be able to, for people or for students to be able to get through that area to reach the school property during the appropriate times. I understand what the school district folks are saying. We don't want to necessarily put strangers into the middle of classrooms either.
Yeah.
So would you change the wording to, instead of negotiate, would be discuss
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
public access, and then maybe instead of allow unrestricted,
Yeah, I would say like discuss public access easement with the Oregon Trail School District to allow access or use of public space to the south of the high school.
Yeah, that'd be fine with us.
and then do you need to add after school hours, or?
I don't know if that's like appropriate, I feel like those are detailed.
You know, if that's school property, then that's an inappropriate thing. If it's not school property, I don't know that that's an appropriate step.
Right.
Right, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Do we feel comfortable with that?
I'm fine with that.
just as these trails get built too, I think just as emergency services access, because as they start going down to this, like they talked about the piece of property at Old
Yeah.
Cedar Ridge going down to the thing, where you gotta think about, we just gotta be part of that, do we even have the carts or the things that go down those trails?
That's a
We're-
good point.
We're gonna have
Yeah.
people with
Yeah,
heart problems, ankles,
yeah,
and then can we get there? So that just has to be a
Yeah.
thought pattern.
yeah, certainly,
How do we get there?
I
right.
think somebody wiping on their mountain bike would be a
Oh.
rather common occurrence on that trail,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, you guys have to be able to access it, and the police do too, for sure.
Okay, great. I have just a note about also adding the words like the public property to just say that we're talking about an easement to access public property, not the school district property. Yeah. Okay, thanks, guys. Anything else? Okay. Goal 3 about funding. So facilitate funding for land acquisition, recreation development, operations, and maintenance.
I think just,
Could you put goal 3 up on the screen for us?
Oh, yeah. Thank
My
you,
bad.
sir.
I think just to add to that part, just thinking as far, again, going back to the fuels mitigation practices,
Mhm.
incorporating that into some type of funding and maintenance. As far as an overall goal, which would be good stewards of if we're promoting fuels mitigation for everybody else, the city's actually doing it through their park system. And I think of it as like, where are going to be our high risk areas, whereas fire has the most potential to occur by somebody flicking the bic or something, or throwing out matches, and this is gonna be that area.
If you put people into those areas.
Yeah.
you're gonna have
Where, yeah, I
more
love that idea.
opportunity.
Where, because there's a lot of text here, where, what can we say and where?
Which one are you discussing now?
We're not talking about a specific policy, but we are saying that, can you repeat?
But no, this is like looking for allocating funding that would help support fuels mitigation practices within your public parks or mostly trail systems to reduce fire risk.
Sure.
Almost feels like it could fit in the policy 3.5 and says, investigate the potential to implement a park utility fee to help fund park maintenance and operations, and like that could fall into the maintenance part of it, but
I think you might want to just add a 3.9 that talks about fuels reduction within open space, or you might want to save that portion for the next section on natural areas and open spaces.
That might be more relevant, actually, now that I'm thinking of it.
Okay.
But, okay,
I think that covers more than just the parks.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But, okay, the concept though is allocating funding for fuel reduction
Yeah.
practices.
Yeah.
Okay, let's make sure we see that somewhere then.
Yeah, I think that would work better in your next section.
Okay.
3.3, you call out general obligation bonds. You don't call out revenue bonds. I'd suggest you just, put a geo / revenue bond
Okay,
in there. Both are available to us for funding options.
great. Anything else under goal 3 before we move on?
So I see your notes here real quick. No, I think everything that she has in here, you'll be able to pick up on pretty quick.
Great. Okay. Moving into the last section. Thank you all for your patience. We have just a few minutes left. Natural resources. So we have 3 goals here: protecting forest, river, and wetland ecosystems and the native species that they support. Goal 2, protect and, can you flip the slides, David? Protect and sustain Sandy's urban forest. Goal 3, protect and conserve open space. And goal 4, ensure ecologically sound development. All right, so I'll just leave you all to read goal 1. Let me know if there's anything that jumps out at you here.
Are any of the properties owned federally? So it says partner with Oregon Department of Fish and, oh, US Forest Service, never mind, sorry.
No worries.
You might add BLM to that, so. I do know there's some BLM. but-
Mhm. Or you have to be part of that also. Or is that gonna be different? Because. Yeah.
ODF and W is,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's different.
ODF is W,
Or Department of Forestry.
right.
Oh, yeah.
Can we move along?
I'm wondering, even Portland Water Bureau, pull around, or is that too far away?
That's. gonna be-
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, goal 2 is about tree canopy or urban forest. Updating the city's tree code. Adopting procedures for planting more drought tolerant native trees and plants.
And fire resistant or fire resilient plants. There's a full document that actually talks about all your drought resistant. And I think it incorporates that in the title of drought resistant, fire resistant plants. So,
Perfect.
yeah,
Okay, drought and fire resistant plants and native trees and plants. Okay,
yep.
great.
We can do it for the,
There's
education.
Yeah,
Yeah.
education
Yeah.
plan.
yeah.
also for policy 2.2, and this is, we've just been kind of at the 30,000 foot stage on this lately, but Public Works and I have been talking about some sort of program to maybe encourage residents to get rid of their lawns and put in, rock gardens or whatever.
Xeriscaping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
Xeriscaping. That's the word I was
Yeah,
looking for.
actually Kelly reached out to me about code for xeriscaping.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
just to see if there were any great like best practices for
Mhm.
code language around that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a note of that.
Yeah, that actually got everybody excited when we started talking
Yeah.
about it. A couple of my neighbors did this. I'm like, huh.
I
That's
would almost say that concept, maybe we punt to goal 4 and
Sure.
ecologically sound development.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anything else here before I want to keep us on time here. Sorry to rush. Goal 3, protect and conserve open space. Do you want to flip the slide, David?
Okay.
Oh, great. I'm having a hard
One
time
step ahead. of you.
You are. So Don, this was policy 3.7 where you shared Rochelle's edits. So I have those noted here.
Right, yeah, this is where I got really excited to talk, sorry. This might also be a place where you might want to take a look at putting in that fuels reduction wording.
Oh, yeah. Right, we were gonna put that,
That's perfect.
okay, what do we want to say about fuels reduction?
I think the gist of it, as I heard, and I'll let you guys speak for yourselves, but the gist of it, as I heard, is to encourage fuels reduction through third-party funding and working with both private and public entities, such as the park department, or working with private contractors to ensure reductions of potential fire fuels. Is that
I'm only pausing because if we throw fire department in now, we're gonna say, hey, we don't have the staffing for
Right.
that. So I'm trying to think of wording.
Well,
why-
you don't have the staffing for it. We don't have the staffing for it either. Nobody seems to have the staffing for it, but
Yeah,
it's something that's really important. And it's a goal. It's not a thing that, or a policy, associated with a goal.
Well, we are talking about policies here, but maybe what we are saying is that the city is gonna make a concerted effort to, go after funding that supports fuel reduction efforts.
yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
Mitigation and fuel reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like it.
encourage and, yeah,
which we know there's grant funding out
Mhm.
there and it's gonna come out here again.
right.
that's
So
perfect.
yeah, so
Yeah,
we're
indeed.
basically stating that the city can have a role in trying to obtain that kind of. funding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great.
It's unlikely that we'd actually go for the grant ourselves, but we could encourage Ant Farm and provide support to
yeah.
them for doing
Well,
this.
and that's where we collaborate on and we partner with it, with all the jurisdictions that would get the funding.
Right,
And,
right,
yeah,
right, right.
totally.
Yeah,
I get-
I'm
I
in.
get- That's good.
This could also be a conversation after, what does fuels production look like specifically? Like, how does that what does it look like out in the field, like when you're doing it?
So like, say you go to a trail system like we were talking about, and you have a lot of like dead vegetation on the ground,
Yeah.
Lateral fuel.
lateral fields
Bring it
going up,
up.
branches being trimmed up so many feet.
Okay.
You're clearing
removing-
brush.
Yeah, yeah, but not removing the natural vegetation,
Yeah.
Yeah,
just
just the
removing
dead stuff.
the junk.
I wonder,
You know, when I was in Ashland, we had a very healthy and strong fuels reduction program, both through our fire department and through the parks department working together.
Yeah,
And it was, you know, a combination of city crews, my parks crews, and contract crews that would do a lot of fuel reduction. And that was everything from targeted tree removal to just piling up and burning, you know, forest debris, you know, to get the fuel out of the space.
you all have a
So it comes in several different areas. It also includes, you know, utilizing trails as fire breaks and different things, you know, through planning of these kinds of things. So it's a little bit more far reaching than just
yeah.
picking up dead wood off the ground. So.
Okay, thank you.
Although they do that as well. I mean, Ant Farm, the biggest thing they do for us is removing down trees. And the great thing about them is not only do they have the equipment and the youth manpower to do it, but then they cut it all up and it goes to the free firewood program. So it gets used for good
Yeah.
purposes too.
I was thinking if you did have a CERT team out here, that could be potentially something that the CERT team helps with. I'm sure that people would love to volunteer to like learn how to do fuels production.
Sure.
and help,
Yeah.
But it also sounds like you have a CERT team too, so
Well,
that's a lot going on.
Yeah.
yeah, in the past, we've targeted like HOAs,
Mhm.
community planning organizations, because they're always itching to do something for the community. and,
Yeah.
Hey, what do you guys want to do this? I'm like,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Instead of kids, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on our very last goal. My apologies, it's 8 o'clock and I want to make sure everyone gets out of here. Ensure ecologically sound development. So this is kind of focused on regulatory practices. Maintaining environmental quality by guiding future development and land use activities that do not significantly deteriorate existing quality of air, water, and land resources. Working with state and federal natural resource protection agencies on development proposals. Identifying and inventorying significant natural features within a planning area through the development process. Or mitigate their losses by placing conditions upon development of such lands, engaging, yeah, wow, that's a very beefy policy.
Is there any thought that there would need to be any infilling, or are there any brownfields or any language that you would want to put in about infilling in the city area as a way to protect the natural resources?
Yeah.
Is
Absolutely.
that already covered?
Mhm. I mean, that is a growth management strategy, but that could certainly, I mean, that's certainly a very kind of respected concept in general regarding protection of natural resources through infill development.
Anything that encourages infill development, I'm 110% for.
Anything that jumps out at anyone here?
Good to me.
Certainly a lot to take in, so I appreciate everyone's kind of patience in working through this. I know it's not an easy task to do, especially on a Thursday night. So if anyone, just kind of as we went through this meeting, if there were any thoughts that came to you, or you forgot to mention something, or you think about something later, please feel free to email me and just send over those thoughts. I'll continue collecting any ideas that you have, say until next Friday. But our next step is to make sense of everything we discussed tonight and start making some track changes and revisions and then sharing that with staff and then sharing that with our city council and planning commission to kind of show what those additional ideas and thoughts were. So big thank you to all of you for coming. and just attending and having the conversation with us. I know that it's, once again, I keep saying this, it's hard stuff to wade through, and it's a lot of information. So just really appreciate it. I guess next steps, just very quickly, we are gonna be going to city council. Oh yeah, so we'll revise our draft goals and policies. Just to let you know, there is an online survey right now that is live around kind of just continuing to collect people's big ideas for how we get to achieve our vision. So we are continually collecting people's feedback on how we get to where we say we want to be. That survey is going to be live for the next 6 months or so. We're also going to be out at a bunch of community events as well. So we'll be out there over the next couple of months. I'll be going to Planning Commission and City Council in early August to present kind of the conversation we had tonight. And then we have our final CAC meeting. I'm looking at you, Shelby, if you're still on the line, in November, and that's the last one. And that's where we're going to be covering the topics of housing, economy, and growth management. A lot of stuff there. And I think I'm probably going to have, we have some folks from Echo Northwest, which is a consulting firm that does housing and economy trends and forecasts. And they're supporting a lot in the development of the goals and policies since they're doing the city's EOA and HNA. I'm gonna have them probably come to that CAC meeting and kind of talk through some of the trends and forecasts and some of the policy language that came as a result of that. So those are our next steps. Yeah, very much appreciate you engaging in the conversation that's coming out. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a great night, everyone. Enjoy your evening.
You
Thanks for
too.
joining us online. Sorry about the awkward hybrid nature. But thank you.
Thanks. Bye.